Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming to talk about My Hero Academia, chapter 366. Woo. Alright, actually no, My Simp Academia. This is My Simp Academia. How could I forget? My Simp Academia 366. And this time, I don't even have to tell you the whole shtick about we criticize fairly, because this chapter, I don't think I'm going to criticize it at all. I don't know, maybe. We'll find something here, and we always do. But I don't think I'm going to criticize it at all, because I really think this was an amazing chapter. Like, the whole process, and you know what, I am biased, because, like, I go through the whole process. I sit down with people I don't know over the internet, and we talk about Hero Academia, and we have laughs. And this week was definitely like a really nice laugh. It was just such a fun experience when you find out about the full moon. Also, really funny that it seems to me like the English translation adjusted it, so they did adaptation of it. If and only if the translation did in fact originally say peach, or the Japanese said peach and not full moon. But in the case that the Japanese says peach, and looking at Viz's translation and seeing that it says full moon, props for the adaptation. Like, a full moon makes more sense in the English connotation, but I don't know because I haven't seen the Raws. Still, just want to point it out because, like, in the spoilers, it was peach. Anyway, yeah, no, what a fun time. That was just hilarious. I know some people say that it takes away from media because it's not serious, but at the same time, it's like, this is what I do enjoy about Horikoshi. Because this is the same stuff that makes Dobby so good. And mind you, like, it's unfortunate in some respects, but this is... Again, I'm going to defend it all the way to the end here because I don't really mind. Mind you, I'm also, like, I tend more towards the idealism part of stuff. But, like, going back to the Dobby point, like, Dobby, the author isn't afraid of making Dobby look stupid. And he does. He does sometimes. Dobby's a very stupid person at times. And mind you, sometimes it's like well earned, and sometimes it's just kind of funny. But he doesn't mind like poking fun at Dobby. And so like I like that it's on the other side, and he's not. It depends on how you look at it. But like showing Mirio to have like a relatively weak play there. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. Make a little bit of a joke. In terms of people saying that this doesn't make sense why Shigaraki wouldn't. This doesn't make sense why Shigaraki would laugh. I just want to point out that the last chapter, 365, we saw Tenko surrounded by hands about to have a freak out. And then, given what we know about Shigaraki psychology dynamics or whatever, we know that these people are taking turns controlling that mouth or controlling that sensation. Tenko, like, as far as I'm concerned, this whole thing with the hands and, like, covering himself in hands, that iconography right now fits a lot more, or sorry, symbology. That symbology right now fits a lot more with Tenko. So when you see that moment of Shigaraki there laughing, I really think that's an 8-year-old. I really think Tenko just saw that and was like, oh, that's funny. It's an 8-year-old, right? Butt jokes always land with 8-year-olds. They're the one people that butt jokes are the most reliable against. Heck, man, given that Family Guy and South Park are still, like, out there. Yeah, no, you can even say that butt jokes are just they transcend all age barriers. Also, recall, Shigaraki's a man-child. This guy probably plays stupid video games with all sorts of butt jokes. I'm pretty sure he played the Stick of Truth. Like, I see that in Shigaraki. This is who he is. Of course, he's immature. Of course, he would have a little moment, especially if Tenko is slightly manifesting and influencing the dynamics there. I think actually, in terms of that part also makes sense. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we're talking about general notes, and we do have a lot of general notes. The page-by-page walkthrough will also be short because thankfully the author spends a lot of time just doing textless panels, so it'll make things a lot easier. And there's many things that happen in a chapter that I'm personally very happy about. But before we move on, let me just say, I think if we go into another chapter, I think what I would really love to see is Mirio's butt joke having de-escalated Tenko. If we go and we see Tenko like going back to black hair and laughing at that butt joke, I really think you like that would be so amazing. Like Mirio, this guy with just, I guess, a really round butt, was able to de-escalate Tenko and like mildly save him. Like, it would be a nice accolade to give Mirio, and it shows like, yeah, a moment of happiness can make a giant difference, or a moment of something funny can make a giant difference. And then it also reinforces Night Eye's philosophy on the world, which we will talk about again because that's also another very critical moment. Yeah, nah, man, like, I really want to see it next. I want to see Mirio get an accolade. I want to see Mirio be like the reason that Tenko started de-escalating. It'll be a little bit tricky because Izuku showed up right there. So like if the author isn't like super ham-fisted about it, people will be able to say that Izuku's the reason that Tenko is calming down. But we'll have to see. Regardless, still funny. Really, I enjoyed it. Going into more general notes, one big thing to point out here is over the last few weeks, maybe the last 2 weeks, I don't really recall anymore, but over the last 2 weeks, I've been saying that, well, I've said a lot of things, but I've been thinking that there is a swing to positivity because you have the author giving us like very clear ideas of like, hey, Bakugo's going to come back to life. Hey, All For One apparently is going to die. He has a time limit on him. You know, we're seeing these swings to positivity. And when we come into this chapter and we look at what's going on here, look at what happened. You have Night Eye. And we go back to this idea that the author wants to make everyone seem valuable. In this chapter, a dead man got to make a difference. He got to make a difference to the person that he imparted his philosophy to. So, you know, I really think this is something the author is doing. I do legitimately think he's going back to positivity. And I feel like when you have this situation here where you have Night Eye saying, so keep smiling, a world without smiles and humor has no bright future. I think that's the author directly just, again, speaking to the fans through the characters, through the story, just saying like, hey, you know, we are still a very bright story. When we line up the chapters, we do see that pattern there. The heroes we're being told the heroes actually were making a difference. In this chapter, we start off like, oh yo, Shigaraki's accumulating the damage, everything is mattering, right? And like the author, you know, he does have this habit of going down towards the idea that little moves matter. And they just kind of all build up over time. Like, heck, if we go back all the way to Night Eye's arc with Shizaki, Night Eye was talking about how, like, everyone's hopes were all piling onto Izuku. Like, the idea of many little things building up to make a miracle happen, like shift the timeline or whatever you want to call it. This has been consistent. This has been Hero Academia. It's just like right now, it is, in this final arc, it's becoming a lot more apparent. And again, Night Eye, you know, he gets to have this moment. What you ultimately see here is that the author does want to use every character that he has. He wants to like really show everyone came together on this one. When you look at this pattern, it makes you think like, okay, if the author has time, he probably will do good on Seiro's moment. He probably will, well, it's guaranteed he's doing good on Hawks' moment. But like another person like Death Arms retired from being a hero, but right now, the hostages might be in trouble. Death Arms might step up there to be able to help out the hostages and just give like that one little like nice note of, hey, I did something worthwhile too. So we got to keep an eye on that. This is going to be one of the more exciting things for the spoilers. This is going to be one of the more exciting things for the spoilers. Are we going to see an upswing across many other battlefields, or like a few battlefields, or any battlefield outside of this one, except for the Endeavor All For One? I don't know. Like, again, the author has so many positions here, but now that we're speaking about, you know, what's going on with the overall structure, in one of the previous chapters reviews, I mentioned that I think we're going to go into Villain Stride, and then we'll go into hero counter. So we'll spend a little bit of time with the villains, like kind of, you know, making good on their threat. But, you know, ever since that chapter, we haven't really gotten that. And instead, we've seen like a quick return to like, hey, yo, things are going to be bright. Like this world's going to be full of smiles and humor. It's going to have a bright future. You know, we're going back into that upswing. So we didn't really get to spend time in misery, which again makes me feel like we know Horikoshi is the kind of person that cares about what little kids reading the manga thinks. We know that this is such a big thing for him that it shows up in the volumes. We know that Hero Academia is at a time slot that is traditionally for children. It's like it shows that are aimed at a younger demographic, at a younger market. The Hero Academia marketing team thinks that little kids is the market to go after. You know, all these little things just pile up and makes you think like, yeah, you know, he might be lightening up some of the stuff for the kids. But the thing is, Horikoshi also has to make an exciting manga, and like the way you make an exciting manga is by imperiling the heroes. So you still have to go and get some sad moments. So what I'm really saying is that we're gonna go back probably into the roller coaster that was the first war. And when I say roller coaster, I just mean like, you know how we had like so many weeks of like something bad happening, then something good, then something bad, and something good. Like, you know, it's interesting because there's so many drives coming into this, and he is still ultimately writing a product that has to sell, and to sell you do cliffhangers, you do all kinds of things, you do the Bakugo thing. Like, it's just, we're probably going to go back into a roller coaster. But I will say, I'm very surprised that we didn't spend more time in darkness. I'm very surprised we have Izuku here right now and not later. Mind you, we're probably still going to go into some dark bits, but this is one of those spots where there's a commenter, Jason Thomas, that always points out that, you know, this might speed up how quickly we get through Hero Academia. And at this point, I don't want to say that the ending is in sight, but if we... It's September right now, right? We're in the 20th of September when I'm recording this. We're really close to the end of the year. If Shonen Jump actually gave Horikoshi a really solid end date, like one that no one can move past, let's say chapter 385, let's say that's the end point for Hero Academia. If Shonen Jump did that, that could like explain some things, but I just can't fathom, after seeing how many like manga have been canceled, like manga that have gotten past chapter 300 and that kind of stuff, I can't fathom that they would give Hero Academia an end date from since last year. It's just, there's too many things that have to come along. Shonen Jump has release schedules. When Hero Academia goes down, they need to have a manga ready to take its place. Like it's a bigger logistical issue, so I just don't see the value of putting like a firm end date on Hero Academia, especially when it makes so much money. But this is one of those situations where we really won't understand what the master plan is until it's over, because then we can kind of analyze it and kind of be like, okay, this is probably what he was thinking here. To give you an example, like Shokugeki no Soma, you can tell the moment that things changed because the author stopped doing exposition. Like you could tell that it was in the final arc because of some plot maneuvers. But yeah, that author had a style, and when he compromised on it, that's when you knew it was ending, or he had gotten the firm date on it. But like even then in Shokugeki no Soma, that date isn't that far out from when it actually ended, where you can spot that it was going to end. So ultimately, it's really interesting. This is one of those moments where like not having that time with the other battlefields makes you feel like, you know, we're rushing it. But it might also just be a response to like Izuku hasn't been around for a long time, or a response to just everything's been pretty miserable, so let me like make things a little bit lighter kind of thing. Also, this moment here with Meteor's butt really reminds me of the time that the boys had those funny faces when the Nomu came out and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, so that's one general note there on just the whole thing with Night Eye. I do want to like really impart on you that take Night Eye's words seriously. The author went out of his way to specifically point out this reality, this philosophy. At the end of the day, Hero Academia is a shonen. Now we have to see how he sticks the landing and how he contextualizes all of this. Now, speaking of master plans, we got to see a lot of really cool stuff here. One of the things I was very happy about was Izuku coming in, not doing his little attack. Him coming in with these little guys at the bottom of the screen, the planes. I was very happy about that, because back when we saw Izuku having his little freak out, one of the alternatives I gave you was, oh, yo, hey, this might just be allies showing up to help Izuku. And thankfully, we went down that route, because enemies attacking Izuku just didn't make sense. People coming in to help him, though, made sense because they knew where he was. So I'm very happy that we got to see that. I'm very happy we got to see him coming in with an escort. That was awesome. And at this point, I have to point out the thing about Mandalay. Like, if you recall the Chapter 359 video, I believe it was Chapter 359. Let me just make sure. Yeah, 359. When Mandalay was talking about she's not been able to communicate with anyone, I remember telling you guys that this was a critical moment, because now if Izuku comes in with the jets, this is the justification as to why the jets didn't communicate with Mandalay to tell him, like, hey, or tell her that, hey, we've got Izuku. So I'm really happy to see this here. This was a critical move on the author's part. This was very good. If anyone says, why didn't Mandalay like find out about the jets earlier, just point them to 359. Oh, sorry. So again, we get to see some really good short-term planning on the author. Some really good foresight. Really good. Thankfully, those are like the moments that you can kind of predict. But there's other little moments that have happened before that I'm not really sure that they might have been pointing to something happening here. But we can't say anything about them until we see the future and where they ultimately end up. Okay, let me see. Any other general points? Yeah. Again, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that we might see an upswing in some battlefields. Like I think the most normal upswing to go for now that Mandalay is able. Well, we don't know if she's able to communicate or if she made visual confirmation on those jets, but maybe we get to see like Skeptic be encountered next chapter. I think that'd be pretty good. If he doesn't want to show the other battlefields, show Skeptic be encountered. But yeah, Izuku showing up here like really throws off the dynamic. We're gonna have to see if we take a break from Izuku or if we keep on this battlefield. I want to say we keep on the battlefield just because it'd be kind of annoying to just have to jump to another one when we haven't seen Izuku do anything worthwhile in a while. We also have the situation with All For One, and he's like him saying that he wants to help Shigaraki out. So, if we have All For One coming to this battlefield and we have Bakugo coming back and fighting All For One, I want to see the ultimate Bakugo moment that Horikoshi promised us, man. I want to see the Fear of God in All For One, and I want it to come from Bakugo. Look, there's a lot of people I would love to see put the Fear of God in All For One. Like, there's many. I will accept any of them. Heck, if Mirko does it with her, like, situation, I'd be fine with that, too. Anyway, those general notes, let's very quickly go into page-by-page walkthrough, because there's a lot of little details here that we have to cover. So first, I want to start by saying that there was a commenter, White Despair, who noticed that this actually might be an art error. In chapter 365, there were 6 heads coming out of Shigaraki. Also, very, I think this was a mildly misleading. But actually, with the error it is. There were 6 heads coming out of Shigaraki's body. When you look at it, though, like his family is made up of 5 people. So there was an extra head. When you go into this chapter, you get to see that there are 5 heads coming out of Shigaraki. So I think what happened was that the author redrew the grandma on the previous chapter because she's not here when you look at this chapter. So props to White Despair for getting that. Anyway, this is one of those spots where you see like just a lot of like finicky semantics, or just like, the author's kind of establishing the rules for how this is going. So we find out that Shigaraki's body is trying to find its optimal form. And then we have the optimal form seemed to be a bloated mass of fingers forever seeking destruction. I wouldn't say that's an optimal form, but if you say that it's a crutch because of Shigaraki's attachment to fingers and that being how his power works, I think that's fine. It's a form that overwhelmed the world around him and kept everyone at arm's reach. That form still seems like, it doesn't seem neutrally the idea of like the optimal form. It seems a form that's optimal for his state of mind, which is something that commenter Miguel pointed out. And we've seen that before with how the father's features have come out where he's stressed. But then we find out that the heroes bested that form. I see that there is a flashback of Sun Eater launching his missile, or not missile, his plasma cannon. So good to see that in fact bested the form. I mean, like, we saw that the fingers themselves weren't super durable. Edgeshot was able to get inside them and like burst them from the inside out. So not really an optimal form here. And then we have, thanks to Erasure, he couldn't heal the accumulating damage to his body. That plus the stress and panic afflicted his mind, gnawed away at his essence. So, we've talked about this before, that Shigaraki's evolution actually doesn't seem perfect. And like really, if you're going to, in terms of interpretation, like the perfect evolutionary body, or a body that always evolves, would be a body that's always creating new cells. It's always, like, we see parts of it, like it's always growing. New things are always coming out. The finicky part here is that whole definition of what it means to heal something, right? Like for me, if I was doing an interpretation of a body that's perfect, always evolving, I would say that the burnt part of his face, well, that would like glop off. Like you just have a bunch of stuff growing out of it. Then you like drop it the way that the rest of the fingers drop, and you leave behind a new regrown face. Like if you're going to go out of your way to grow a whole mouth on your arm to get rid of poison that got into your system, you can definitely just rip off your head, or you not rip it off, but like just grow it out like a growth, release it and then just regenerate a new one. That's what a perfect body would be able to do. Like, especially when you consider the human body is all about regeneration. When you consider that your cells are always dying and you're always regenerating, like your skin when you get a cut and all that kind of stuff, your bones are always regenerating. When you consider that, heck, man, what your liver can regenerate too pretty well. Anyway, when you consider that the body is all about regeneration, like a natural, and you go this far, it's not that hard to put the interpretation being that you can just heal as a function of boosting the body's natural capabilities. Anyway, we're playing semantics here, but it's just like it's important to understand where exactly the limits of this form are. And like when All For One talks about the perfect body, no, by definition, this cannot be the perfect body. This narration is probably the closest we're going to get to like a really good non-biased explanation, non-sensational explanation. I also do want to point out though, the narration itself uses seemed. And seemed is a word that means that this is a narrator that is looking at the situation and is making judgments based on what they have seen here. In other words, unreliable. This is an unreliable narration. If the author wants to pivot on it, he can. So just keep that in mind. You have to be really careful with narrators in this situation because especially for him, like he's going to get surprises by misleading the readers and then pointing out something that's technically true and not going against the things that we've seen before. Page 2 and 3. So this is, again, the author is very clever here. He has this cool new form. People pointed out that, yo, he got giant, like, actually. And it's like, yeah, shit, he really did. I do think it's goofy that you summon the faces of your parents and your family, just like use them to smack people. I mean, sure, you know what, you guys give me all the symbolism that you want, give me all the metaphors that you want, because like you know what, if I was describing this in a novel, I probably would throw in like a good 6 lines about the meaning of this, just like the magnitude of it like was transferred to the reader. But the critical line here is that this is the body in a new ideal form for this particular moment. So the particular moment thing is really important because it just says that, oh, he might have an ideal body later. Like this might be second form out of 4 forms, right? And then like the 4th form, he'll be saying like, oh yeah, this is my ideal body, my perfect form, like perfect Frieza pretty much kind of thing, right? So just keep that in mind because the author is being very careful here with his wording. We have Mirko coming in with the ever so original dialogue of eat this and die. I also like struggle. Like sometimes, I've watched too much anime, and sometimes it's like the banter that I put in a scene is just like die, and it's like, oh, this is lame. Like just saying die all the time. Nah, it just reminds me of that. It's just funny. Like a lot of like people just love saying die all the time. But what else are you gonna say in this moment, right? You might as well just curse up a storm, but then that's not really age appropriate. All right, we have Mirko getting like wrecked. Honestly, she should have been just like pulverized into like a pile of goo, but that's not what happened here. We then have Sun Eater getting smashed, and he has that little moment where he calls out to Mirio, his best buddy. Nothing really happens. We have on page 4 Nejire finally doing something. I am no longer going to make fun of her. Took a while for her to get there, but she got there. We get to see, like the consequences of that. Now, like, I'm not going to berate her for getting hit. She's at the end of her rope here, man. Like, she's tired. Like, it's okay. She's fighting a Hulk pretty much. So, good. This is what we kind of have to see. We got to keep on putting that pressure. Good for her, making the hit. We do get to see them later and they're fine. So, good for her. Anyway, after that, we go into just the whole thing about Shigaraki pointing out that Mirio has nothing. Again, this is really good on the author. Being able to make your characters look so pathetic, that's a really important skill because it really makes it feel like, yeah, that this is a really dire situation. Now, mind you, making your character look stupid, it kind of depends on the genre. Some genres you don't want to do it. Like if you're doing a power fantasy isekai or a wish fulfillment isekai, you really, really don't want to make your character look stupid unless it's like comedic. But if you're in a serious situation, you don't want this kind of futility. But for Hero Academia, again, this one it depends on the eye of the beholder on this one. I think it's good. We have Best Genus giving interesting dialogue with him saying that's clearly a defensive form, one that rejects everything. I find it really funny that after seeing Mirko get smashed, and like this man being gigantic and being more of a target and like just throwing people around, that he would say this is a defensive form. I mean, yeah, defensive in the sense that he's covering up his already reinforced skin with more reinforced skin. But if you're saying like defensive, like subconsciously defensive, I would agree. Anyway, what's really important here is because of all the nuance that comes into this, and because that statement isn't clear, and especially the thing that the form that rejects everything, yeah, like this is more the author speaking than it is any reasonable character. So he's trying. So this is the most important part, probably, when it comes to describing this form. It's specifically the thing that rejects everything. I think the author's hand shows up a little bit more there. We go into page 6. So on page 6, we see more of the meteor futility, which was really good. On this page, what I think is worth seeing is that Mirko hit the tree so hard, she splintered it, but she has no wood piercing her body. And remember, wood can pierce the body. If you have a sharp stick, it's going to go through you pretty well, unless you're wearing armor. So she got really lucky. She hit that thing so hard, and her skin was somehow harder than the wood itself, unless the author's going to say like, actually no, that there is something stuck inside her, like she got impaled or something. But I found this one to be really ridiculous. We see Sun Eater over here. It looks like Sun Eater's trying to get up, so he looks fine. Nejire is still intact, so she looks fine as well. She does look like she's bleeding. And we see that some of the panels are lifted. It'll be interesting to see whether or not someone pops out of the panel and pulls her in or something like that. And then we have Mirio pointing out that Night Eye saw the future. Honestly, we don't really know what moment he saw. He might have just seen the war, but this was a pretty good setup. The futility was a pretty good setup. We go on to page 7. In page 7, I think the only thing that you should really question is how exactly Mandalay was able to get the information for 2 seconds. It gets a little bit wonky, because if she made visual confirmation on it, those jets are moving so quickly. They must be moving hypersonic. That 2 seconds is probably the right number there. It's just really interesting. This is one of the things I want clarified. How did Mandalay make the confirmation? Was it visual, or did she get signals coming in? If she got signals coming in through the intercoms, then that probably means that whatever caused the disruption has been neutralized. Okay, so with 2 seconds being what we needed, like, this was a pretty good setup. We go through the whole thing with Night Eye. Again, what you have to take away from there is that the author made even a dead character valuable in the final fight. We have full moon rising tonight. In the Japanese, it was the peach is ripe. I think the peach is ripe is hilarious, but I'm happy to use full moon because that's what I was going to use in the title. So that's great. We have Shigaraki making full visual contact with it, and we have that lovely page of Shigaraki going ha and like laughing. And we see Izuku over at the edge. Now, this was a cool little image here, him doing the slingshot. We see that there's the aura around him. You can see it more clearly on the final pages, but the aura was radiating from his legs, so I really do think it was just the Fa-Jin aura. Like, Izuku was probably squatting, like doing a lot of repeated squats while he was on the planes. So he probably stored up a lot of energy. When Izuku comes in for that smash, there's no way that's less than 100%. That had to be way more than 100% smash. It's gonna be hilarious if, like, in the next chapter, All For One takes over and it's like, hey, that thing didn't even do that much to me. Like, All Might would do better. It's like, yeah, right, bro. Yeah, right, bro. Bro, never, nah, man. Nah. All Might would never do what Izuku just did. That amount of power, no way, man. Like, the man came in with elastic potential, alright? I read One Piece. I know rubber is, like, the strongest thing in the universe, alright? Nah, man. Nah. Now, just to very quickly point out something that the commenter pointed out, Izuku came foot first, and he smashed Shigaraki so hard he made Shigaraki flip. So, yeah. Now, I gotta say, because Shigaraki flipped, a lot of energy is being dispersed that way, but he probably still took a pretty sizable hit on that one. Overall, the stuff with Izuku's entrance was pretty good, but let's face it, the full moon 100% overshadowed Izuku's moment here. I can't wait to see. If we get another shot of Tenko on the inside, I want to see who was the bigger hero here. I really hope it was Mirio, because that would just be hilarious. Anyway, the shots of Izuku coming in, I thought they all looked really, really good. Can't wait to see what happens next. Yeah, that's it for me. So I got to really quickly edit this video and put it up. It's 30 minutes long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. You guys are all pretty awesome, but not as awesome as Mirio's full moon.